This informational item is about buses and about having the PSTA board, hopefully next month, as your November 2020, adopt a policy on the technology or the process that we buy either both replacement and expansion buses. And the recommendation is going to be for the majority of our buses to purchase hybrid electric buses like we have and like you just approved under the consent agenda to buy 8 more. The reason I think we need a policy, and right now PSTA, the board, has never adopted a policy, a specific policy on the types of technology of the type of buses we buy. But I think I'm going to recommend, I think it's the right thing to do, to have a policy and not revisit this every single year in a different way. It has a great history of the practice of buying hybrid electric buses has a great start at PSTA researching the minutes. And this was at the request, we put this presentation or some of this information together for the Finance Committee at their request 2 months ago when they requested that we take a look at whether or not we should continue down the path of buying hybrid buses, which have a much more expensive upfront cost, or maybe consider going back to straight diesel buses to save capital money, and then we could perhaps buy more buses. And that's what the impetus of this was. And ultimately, the Finance Committee at their last meeting recommended moving forward with the hybrid bus purchase for this year. And then, so this is a little bit different. This is about setting up a policy for the board to adopt about how it looks at bus purchases. But again, when we researched the precedents for this, in 2008, the staff recommended testing of one hybrid to get one hybrid out of 200 buses in the fleet and 10 diesels just to see if it would work. And the board unanimously overturned the staff recommendation and instead bought 10 hybrids instead of 11. And I guess because of that great thing, PSTA won this amazing Tampa Clean Air Partnership Award for that action. I'm not sure where that is in the office, but so far PSTA has about 20%, 40 of its 200 main buses are hybrid buses. We have now 8 more. The reason I think we need a policy is we are, as you just heard from Ernst & Young, and the whole process, we are doing a much better job, I think, and doing much more long-term planning about the agency's future. Now we're looking at the 2050 in their plan, and we are trying to tie closer to our TDP and our longer-range plans. We have a 5-year capital improvement program, which we didn't have in the past, and so it makes sense to plan out these bus purchases, which, as you I think saw on those graphs from Ernst & Young, those amount to those Mount Everest peaks. That is a major part of our capital program over the long period of time with these bus replacement projects. The benefits of hybrid electric buses are, I think, understood, but by breaking them out as I have in this slide, that they of course have environmental benefits. Their noise pollution is substantially less than the regular diesel buses. The pollution, the emissions out of the tailpipe are substantially less even than the clean diesel buses that are out there today. And they are the lowest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, even less than CNG. Then looking at it from a different perspective, not necessarily environmental, but a social or sort of public perspective, the riders love the buses. And that is important. They love the logo of the smart buses, in all of our surveys we've ever done of riders and non-riders, PSTA is used positively because of providing that clean technology. And folks generally appreciate or view PSTA as the sustainable form of transportation around the county. And that is equally an important view. Not just the environmental benefits, but also those social benefits. And then, of course, very important, and what the Finance Committee was really looking at, was the third perspective, the financial perspective. First of all, the hybrid technology shown by that 2008 and to the present have proven to be reliable. Unlike some other experiments that PSTA has done over its life with CNG, early forms of CNG, which proved to be very unreliable. A lot of systems, I'm not sure about PSTA, but a lot of systems have bought electric buses that have sat in the yard because they don't work. Or this technology on the hybrid electric diesel buses that we have been buying is proven. And the costs, actually, the operating costs, at least in our history, are less, so far, are less than the diesel buses. They are well maintained. There's a lot of questions about whether we should be looking at compressed natural gas and CNG. And there is less experience, there's some experience here at PSTA, but less evidence, I guess, on the long haul about their operating and maintenance costs compared to these other technologies than even the hybrid technology. And that, as you saw from the Ernst & Young perspective, the long-term perspective, the capital investments are major in the early years, but over time, it's the most important aspect to our fiscal health is the operating and maintenance growth and how that plays out. So very important, and I think the Finance Committee, when they asked, they wanted us to look at a life cycle cost analysis of the buses as best we can to get that information. And so we did that. And that's what's shown on this chart, sort of in basic format. It's actually very, very difficult to get an apples-to-apples comparison. We're trying to compare PSTA experience with the hybrid buses versus the diesel buses, but it's difficult. And we're still trying to refine the number because we have older diesel buses and we have newer hybrid buses. So we were trying to get a cost per mile, and this is the best number we have so far. But the hybrid buses of equal age, but not necessarily equal vintage, have a lower 80 cents per mile, and that includes the fuel savings, the fuel economy. So of course, the hybrid buses have better fuel economy. So that is the majority of the operating cost savings. But there's also a slight, so far at least in our own experience, maintenance cost, parts and repair cost savings per mile on the hybrids than on the diesels. So when you extrapolate that over the life of the vehicle, plus the $200,000 upfront additional cost of the hybrid, the ultimate life cycle difference of the two technologies is about $40,000, or $40,000 on a total $1 million it costs to buy and operate a bus over its life. So, unlike perhaps maybe the perspective that you could buy two diesels for every one hybrid, if you do this life cycle cost, it's certainly not the case that you can buy 2 for 1. You can buy about 25 diesels for every 24 hybrids because of that life cycle viewing. The financial difference over the life of the vehicles is not substantial to outweigh the benefits, both environmental and social. So again, we're going to be talking about this soon at the Legislative Committee. And the Legislative Committee has been talking about bringing back to the full PSTA board a comprehensive sustainability, what we're calling a sustainability policy, and I think this hybrid bus policy would fold under that. Maybe not be a separate standalone, but would be part of a new decision-making process that that the board would adopt, and that we would look at decisions like this, especially long-term decisions, from a vantage point of what is sustainable. What is sustainable for the organization? Financial is obviously tantamount to that, but also environmental and social. Certainly the hybrid buses represent an environmental benefit to PSTA, as well as a strong financial commitment to our long-term plan. And then I think as you all have been doing and with the green light process, we are working to connect out to the public and to engage the public more and more in everything we do. So I think a sustainability policy is probably the avenue that we might make this decision. But I guess if there's any questions, maybe one more comment that was made at the Finance Committee that I have on my slide is the hybrid technology is probably not perfect for every type of transit application because it, of course, gets better fuel economy and is more cost effective on the more stop and go where there's many stops along the route, like almost all of PSTA services. But there may be some services like express services that go at high speeds for almost their entire trip and they only have 1 or 2 stops, like over to Tampa. Maybe if we had an express to Tampa, like we do now, that we would not buy hybrid technology because there would be no fuel economy or other savings because the hybrid technology wouldn't be really operating in that. It really is much more effective on the regular transit services, which 90-some% of our service is, where you have to stop and go. And I think that was a comment made at the Finance Committee too. Our Finance Committee chair has left the building or the room, so if there's any other questions.
Yes, Brad, I know you sit on a lot of national committees and groups, and recently I've had an opportunity to attend a lot of transportation workshops and seminars, and the Florida Department of Transportation is pretty focused on preparing for, they refer to it as smart cars and driverless automobiles, and I wondered if in your projections and assumptions you were taking any of that into consideration as it relates to perhaps buses. Because if the roadways end up having the technology in them that the Florida Department of Transportation is supposedly planning for, it seems that especially as it relates to the bus rapid transit routes, we would want to be looking at that somehow. I don't know, do you have any input on any of that?
Well, some of those discussions about smart cars or autonomous vehicles have been discussed locally and by the Florida DOT through at some presentations I saw at BARDA. And just with my friends in our labor union in the back, there's no plans to go with driverless buses anytime soon.
That's what I'd ask.
And FDOT even at their presentation at BARDA, those are emerging technologies that are going to be incrementally implemented. They made a point, which I hadn't thought of, that cruise control on your car is sort of the first technology toward autonomous vehicle operation, or phase 1. And they said that there's still not a plan, there's really not a technology or plan out there yet to be George Jetson and have and just sit in your car and check your phone and not have any control. You always will have a steering wheel, or at least, not always, but you will project it out as far as they can see, have a steering wheel and have to be cognizant. So it'll be incremental over time. But, so those technologies would certainly apply to buses too, I would imagine. But this is really about the propulsion technology, about how the vehicle moves, not necessarily how it steers.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Scott. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea to look at a long-term vehicle replacement policy. I think adding 2 items to the decision-making principles of fleet replacement cycle and future fleet expansion or contraction needs should be included in that.
I'm sorry, what was that one?
Future fleet expansion or contraction needs.
Oh, okay.
Because we can, $40,000 may not seem much to us in terms of vehicle life cycle costs, but it probably does mean something to the taxpayers. So I do think we need to keep that in mind. particularly when we're not replacing the fleet as quickly as we should be replacing the fleet. And I also just wanted to make a point that the hybrid bus is actually a diesel hybrid bus. It has a diesel engine in it. So a gallon of diesel fuel burned in the diesel hybrid bus versus a straight diesel bus will produce the same amount of emissions, just over the life of the vehicle, the diesel hybrid will use less of it. So, and also, the slide with the cost per mile analysis there,
Yeah.
that 80 cents per mile is going to go up. And I just want to point that out as well. There are several, right now, the hybrid fleet average age is 2.88 years. Diesel fleet is 7.55 years. The formulas I looked at on that spreadsheet encompass the entire fleet into those numbers. There are a number of components on the hybrid bus that are a lot more expensive to replace when they fail, and at some point they will fail, such as the battery packs, which is about a $40,000 hit. We haven't had to do any of those, and hopefully we don't have to do many of them. But that 80 cents per mile is going to creep up. And I'm not saying we don't buy hybrid buses. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I just think we just need to look at the entire picture when we do make decisions about vehicle purchasing. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Mose.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to also just put in basically a support of the policy. I think that, we do represent the future in many ways, and it's the general population. And we're able right now to make this decision because we, the 2008 board, made the decision to buy those extra ones, so we have more than one to be able to make a decision on. And the difficulty even as a city, in trying to make decisions as to which way you go is who's done it before and how much data is out there and does it make sense. And somebody has to be first to make those decisions, or second. And so the idea, when it makes the appropriate sense to try, I think is a very good thing. Not only looking at diesel hybrids, but also, as you said, compressed natural gas and other things which are being discussed, if they're better now or better in the future, but not necessarily that the policy is only focused at diesel hybrid, but gives it the ability to look into whatever technologies are coming down the path that also would make sense. But, my thoughts, thank you.
Yes, the legislative committee will be meeting at 12 right after this meeting to discuss just to begin the discussions on the sustainability policy. And the way I understand it is the sustainability policy would help provide the framework to make decisions about these types of bus purchasing decisions, among other things. And I think what we're looking at is basically a process where we measure the baseline of what we're doing now and then set goals for improvement. And some of those goals may include, among other things, reductions in volatile organic compounds, nitrogen oxide, particulate matter, greenhouse gases, and carbon dioxide. It would certainly also include other practical management items, such as what Commissioner Scott referred to with some fleet replacement goals, expansion, contraction needs, would take into consideration perhaps the cost of increased infrastructure cost if we looked at CNG. But I really want to stress that I think what's important about it is that we're measuring a baseline and we're setting goals. And once we set goals for reduction, then that helps guide us for whatever technology we might want to apply as a tactic to reaching those goals. So in some instances, diesel hybrid buses might work, and in some instances it might not, but at least we have a framework for evaluating these technologies.
Thank you. And I remember that meeting where we decided to buy the 10 and to get to that point, to get a recommendation to give one information was challenging, but I think it was the right thing to do. And it's probably the thing I hear the most from the non-riders is the noise. And whether you're downtown sort of in a cavern of buildings or in the residential areas where the buses go through, people notice the difference in the noise and sometimes wonder where the buses went because they are so much quieter, and they notice that, and that's the last of what we've done. no other questions for Brad. Yes.
I just want to say that I was a little suspect of the numbers as they were originally presented, and if you consider that we would have the opportunity to increase the fleet by 50%, which is the difference between the 400,000 and the 600,000, then you would have, if you did it at a great degree, you would be immediately knocking down your maintenance costs, because the older buses cost more to maintain than the newer ones. So right away, you'd have 50% more reduction in your maintenance costs. On the other hand, I think the public expects us to set an example in areas like environmentally responsible things, and that's what they're expecting to see. And I think when you look at the sustainability situation, it's hard to argue against a fleet of hybrid, because that's where people want us to go. And if we want to have some support in 2014, that's what they're going to want to see us doing, and that's what we should be doing.
Just a quick comment. I support where you're going and what Ms. Rice was just saying. And I think that a broad policy that you're describing
allows us to do what Mr. Scott was discussing, and that's analyzing those things without tying our hands as to what the technology should be. Because times will change, new technologies will arise. If we have the goals, it's about meeting those goals, and there's 100 different ways to skin a cat that we want to go. And so, as you mentioned, Brian, we may see trends in the hybrid that suggest we do something different. Right now it's working, so we'll continue to do that. But that broad policy, I think, overboard is the technology. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to ask, but I knew with the hybrid buses ran better, it was less of a carbon footprint, but the maintenance, how was the maintenance? You're talking about the brakes and stuff like that. How is that going for the mechanics on the maintenance?
As Commissioner Scott just mentioned, so far, so good. They're our newest buses, and we've had no problems.
I know the diesel one doesn't have batteries, but other than that, the normal way and chat parts and all of the allocated to keep the fleet running, that we have not seen any of that yet from the fleet that we have of hybrids.
Correct. And hats off, I want to introduce Henry Lukasik, our maintenance director here at PSTA, and Mr. Newton. He would be welcome to talk shop with you until forever. And he has done that, and I want to thank the finance committee who really got into this and identified the real challenge in really coming up with a good numbers, cost estimate for these different types of technologies here from the PSTA experience. As Mr. Scott said, with Mr. Scott and Mr. Titan and Mr. Barkley and Johnson, who were here. Mr. Roach was not, I don't think he was there. But we had a long discussion about the numbers and how these shake out over their life.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brad, I think it was at the Economic Development Commission when you presented Green Light Analysis. We had a question from someone from the city of Santee about their upcoming CNG project, and they asked if we could share any infrastructure. You recall that meeting?
I remember that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we actively reviewing CNG? I know you have it under continuous review. You say that CNG only costs require review, but are we actively reviewing that, or have we pretty much said it's not competitive with hybrid?
What we've said is that we need to do more research and understand the long-term O&M costs of that before we would commit to that. I think we have now this 5 years of experience with the hybrid technology, and that's why I think the policy should stick with that for now. We had, I can't say we're having active discussions with any of the CNG experts now, but we have in the last year, and there's still questions about PSTA's length of service that we provide, where the number of miles that we operate on our buses is much longer than most other transit systems. We're the longest in the whole benchmarking group. And we're kind of getting toward the upper limits on how much capacity you can put on a bus and CNG. Yeah, and there's been new technologies that are always emerging on CNG that allow vehicles to go longer. But as of, I think that analysis was done maybe right before Henry got here, so maybe early this calendar year. The Clearwater, I think the Clearwater gas guys and an expert they brought in were concerned. We would have to have multiple fleets,
Okay.
Stuff like that.
So as technology evolves, we'll just keep taking a look at it.
Yeah.
Now, your recommendation is hybrid.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item, performance updates.
I'll just go ahead and stay up here. Two things I wanted to highlight. There was a public hearing on the Howard Franklin Bridge design here at PSTA. Several of you came to that on October 8th, and then they had one over in Hillsborough. But the Florida DOT has now completed a public input process on a multi-year design PD&E effort on the Howard Franklin Bridge replacement. And they have come up with a recommendation that is a simple replacement of the current bridge that needs to be replaced. It's the southern span, but it's the one that goes north from Pinellas to Hillsborough, is reaching the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced. And the official FDOT recommendation that they brought to the public was just to replace that in kind. The 4-lane bridge with a new 4-lane auto bridge. And there was a majority of the folks that came to the public hearing that was held here and over in Hillsborough were concerned about that and asked FDOT to allow for the design to accommodate a future transit option, or a multimodal design option for the future, perhaps phased in so that the auto lanes came first and then the transit later, but not to preclude transit as it appears their official recommendation might. Their overall design, presentation showed different options that would allow for a transit connection, but they didn't have, or at least they're in writing, it says that their recommendation is the standalone bridge. So what we are planning on doing, and we're coordinating with the Pinellas MPO as well on this, is to send official, or pass official resolutions by PSTA and the MPO here that we don't want to preclude a future transit option on the bridge design and get that to FDOT. So since the public comment period is closed and we don't want to miss any opportunity, you should expect to see a resolution like that on your November 20th agenda at PSTA, and Sarah was there. At your those of you who are in the MPO will see something like that. And then at the legislative committee meeting now, we will, there's an action item to write a letter on behalf of the legislative committee, at least, so we can get something in now, but then follow up with the resolution at your next meeting.
And Brad, after that meeting, there was a couple of articles in different papers that said DOT was leaving that option. Were those unofficial quotes or? Well,
that was encouraging. but it just wasn't it's not in writing on that. And we've had some discussions with Bob Clifford at T-BARTA and others, and I know he's had some discussions with FDOT. And there was a discussion about that the design could be altered by just $25 million, or the bridge could be strengthened, the bridge substructure could be strengthened for a fairly low amount of funds in order of magnitude of the total bridge cost, and to allow for a transit option in the future. But there's been minimal, that's not really in writing either. So I think actions by PSTA and the MPO, I think will be helpful in keeping that option open as FDOT. FDOT's plan now is to go to the 2014 state legislature and try to get funding for the next phases of design and ultimately construction included in the work program. So that's what we want to get in front of and make sure that they keep options open as they go to the next phase.
And if we can, once we get that to out soon, I know there's, it's good at the public hearing to see major employers come and support keeping a transit option open. But certainly in the Gateway, West Shore, Tampa Airport, all those entities are interested in making sure we don't eliminate that option in the future. So if we can get something that they can also see, perhaps write some letters or have some support or make some phone calls. I think hearing from employers is important as well.
I was just going to add to that, the same thing you were saying, how do we get the folks over in the Hillsborough side to join us in doing this?
Yeah.
Both transit agencies as well as major employers. Is that something that we have someone that can sort of take on and make calls? I mean, obviously we can do that as well, but there's a timing issue that.
Yeah, we are trying to make all those phone calls and try to talk to the Hillsborough MPO and to Hart and to T-BARTA about coordinating this,
Yeah, it would be silly not to have a transit component of some kind. I mean, that would just be irresponsible.
Thank you. I was shocked as well because the news reports said they were including a light rail component. Tampa Bay Times, I think TBO as well. So what's your deadline? I would be happy to bring this back to the commission and see if we can get a letter from the county commission as well.
Well, we have technically missed they've closed the public comment period. But we were assured that if public organizations were going to provide comment, that FDOT would still listen. That's what we were told. I think the real deadline is this calendar year prior to the 2014 legislative session, that as they go to Tallahassee and they try to seek the funding for these different phases, that a recommendation that precludes transit is not the item that they bring forward. And you're right.
Now it's just a 4-lane replacement or replacement for the current car.
That is what's in writing. That's what's in the report. But you're right, the articles and the feedback at that provided at the meetings did imply that they were open to considering transit options. So it might come down to a level of phasing that we don't want them to say necessarily, well, that'll be some future phase or something. We want them to be planning on it or incorporating it into their first phase of design.
Thank you. And I also attended the meeting here and attended part of the meeting over in Hillsborough where there were some similar questions brought up from the Hillsborough folks about knowing that we need to make sure this is extendable to transit. The one thing that troubles me is we started this journey, started the actually advanced the Howard Franklin feasibility replacement project by 2 years because we wanted to see how it would fit in with the transit things that we were also developing.
We paid, didn't
And
we? We paid money to help for that,
so,
because of that.
so
I'm
I'm,
sorry.
so I'm really concerned that someplace along the way, the scope of the project changed, or it appeared to change without any interaction with the stakeholders that started that journey. And that to me is quite troubling if we're going to be partners in the region. That's really my opinion.
That should be included in the
Yeah.
reminded, I mean, they should be reminded.
They know.
Yeah, but no, but it's a public letter, everybody should know.
Well, and we've been talking to them about transit along other construction projects in Pinellas and other places where they don't incorporate or include the transit elements and the impact on transit. And we passed resolutions in 07 and 08 and
So, look for that at your next meeting at MPO and at the legislative committee. The other item I wanted to bring up under.
Got a few more.
Yeah, the rest of you who've been here long enough have got a better feeling for this. But it seems that TBARTA and MPO have been making plans and drawing maps for years now, and that the transit going across the Howard Franklin has always been a part of it. So I can't understand why TBARTA hasn't spoken up more about this. From what you were saying, it sounded like they were relatively silent. And I don't know if that's just not how they operate, preferring to work behind the scenes. But I don't see how this recommendation from the DOT can be made when it basically ignores the recommendations that have been forthcoming from the best informed sources on both sides of the debate.
Okay. Okay, I want to make one more comment under the performance updates which you have before you, but I want to just announce or remind the board that we're doing our best to bring economic development and tourists to Pinellas County by hosting the annual Florida Public Transit Association Conference on this coming Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday in Clearwater Beach. And to thank Commissioner Welch for being one of three welcoming members in order to be politically neutral. Both Senator Brandis and Senator Latvala will also be joining Commissioner Welch in welcoming a record number, some 350 transit public officials and private folks from around Florida, all over Florida.
How does that make it politically neutral? You don't have
I would say green light.
It's a redefinition of the politics in this country.
Senator Brandis, as you know, is the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, and Senator Latvala is the senator in Senate District where the conference will be held. So that's the purpose for the two of them. But I will send out an invite to any of you. In addition to that Monday morning sort of opening session, there will be the Secretary of FDOT, Secretary Prasad, will be presenting, as well as the FTA regional administrator and some other folks like that. But should be a good conference.
Should we be talking to them about our rates when we see them?
There will be a lot of people from FDOT there, mostly transit people, who I'm sure will share our views. But anyone that we see, we will mention.
Transit arthritis, we should just wear pants.
Did you say said you were going to send us an invitation so we can know the details.
Yeah, I'll send you the whole program, but highlight perhaps what it might be, something that you'd be interested in. Okay. Let me also highlight, and this is covering the transit development plan, but there's a lot of materials that are at your places that you probably have already looked at. Let me just highlight it. I think this was the one on top. This is our light rail station development concepts. And this is I think a really helpful document for the public, and we made extra copies to try to get this out into the public world more. But this is the product of the work that PSTA paid for partially with the MPO and the Pinellas Planning Council in hosting of charrettes and meetings all along the proposed alignment. And this is sort of the summary document of all that input from developers and private landowners in all the different cities. And there's pictures of all 16 proposed stations from the ground. And that's the first time this has been done, is that to show folks sort of what could be potentially possible, very specifically to their area. It starts in Clearwater and goes down to St. Pete. So that's handout number one. Handout number two is and this is really awesome. I want to highlight it. This is our PSTA Transit Development Plan, and this is a requirement by the Florida DOT that every transit system in Florida annually develop a transit development plan. And so PSTA has done that year after year for its entire history. And we've hired a consultant to do it for us. And that consultant is hired by 25 other transit systems in Florida to do theirs. So they just search and replace, and they put the PSTA name in there, I think. And they're all on my shelf. We'd like to go look at it. But this is the first time the PSTA staff completed the update. And it's really quite comprehensive. For the first time, it has our capital improvement program in there, and it ties to the Green Light Plan and the bus plan. So this is a helpful, the TDP update. This is a minor update. Every 5 years, you have to do a major update. So next year will be the major update on that. And then last is the budget document that you adopted last month.
Thank you for that reading material. Did you want to go into the county workshop now?
Yeah, just a reminder under future meeting subjects and update that the legislative committee meeting is meeting after this meeting, and the legislative committee is chaired by Ms. Darden Rice and includes Ms. Johnson, Mr. Newton, Ms. Long, and Mr. Dana, Chair Dana. That is the legislative committee, so please don't leave. Okay. Moving on to the county workshop. There is a county workshop on the proposed Green Light Pinellas Plan and referendum scheduled for next Tuesday, I think at 9:30 at the county. Let me just give you a little bit of background for those who maybe are not as inundated with this. It is Pinellas County. It is Pinellas County that levies the sales tax. And it is the Board of County Commissioners that approves not only the ballot, to put this on the ballot, but approves the sales tax to be levied. And that's been known obviously for a very, very long time. It's been known by PSTA for a very long time. Actually, about 10 years ago, when the PSTA board was expanded, it was expanded to add more county commissioners on it because there was this knowledge that there was a key tie to the county and to the county commissioners. So it's very, very important that the county board, the PSTA board, has 4 county commissioners on it. This past spring, we were well aware of the importance of the county board of county commissioners and the county itself in this Green Light Plan, and we reconstituted the ACPT, specifically to be responsive to how the county wanted the ACPT to be created, so that it could respond ultimately to the county. And then, of course, the Green Light committees and the Green Light Council, that is our public engagement effort, has also been designed all around the county commission, sort of as an entity. There are no county commissioners on the Green Light Council because the Green Light Council is speaking or making a recommendation to the county commission. So I think that, I don't know, maybe that's obvious to everyone, but there's a very key connection between this Green Light Plan and what we're doing and what we're working on in all of our committees and the county commission. And that has been acknowledged, maybe a little bit late in the game, but acknowledged clearly now by the county staff and the county attorney and the other county commissioners that are not having served on PSTA. And they have, as the chair of the county commission, Mr. Welch, identified, we have scheduled now for about the last 4 months, December 3rd as a workshop and December 10th as the final vote by the county commission to do 3 things. Set, again, confirm what they already voted on back in February, that November 2014 is the date of the referendum. And then two items, which are at your places. The proposed ballot language and what we're calling an interlocal agreement between the PSTA and the county. Now, those dates of December 2010 for all those actions, we had proposed early, and they had been part of our planning for the Green Light Plan all along based on what we saw happen over in Hillsborough County in 2010. There wasn't nearly the amount of planning activity going on in Hillsborough before the referendum, as you know, but they didn't get, the county did not vote on the ballot language until their meeting in May 2010, only 6 months prior to the vote. And it wasn't really until after that vote by the county in May that they got an advocacy campaign going, or even started doing some of the planning. So they were doing all of these things in a very short period of time, and that is one of the reasons they identified as being a big problem toward their failure on that referendum. So early on we knew that, and we set December to give ourselves a year time for the advocacy campaign. So it is very important, I think, or it is very important to stick with that December vote by the county so that we can keep moving forward and have enough time to keep getting out into the public with this information. So again, December 3rd and December 10th are sort of the key dates that we had been identifying. And then just about, well, really a week ago, the county, who has just started sort of analyzing this in greater detail, the county staff, worked with the Chair Welch to schedule Tuesday, October 29th, as a 3rd time that the county board would discuss this in some detail. Two items that we have prepared, Alan Zimmett and myself have prepared, and we presented these to the county attorney back in August, and to the county administrator back in August, that are before you are the draft ballot language and the proposed interlocal agreement. And I have a slide, one slide. Presentation here. I don't know if it can be shown. The priorities that Alan and I put together in drafting that, first the ballot language that you see before you are two things. Number one is simplicity and straightforwardness. And that is what we have tried to highlight throughout this entire green light process. And as you know, it is not simple, but it is very difficult to make all these transportation issues simple. But we believe that it's important to make this as clear as possible to the voters what this is all about. And so that would still be our goal. Not to turn this into necessarily a legal thing or a safety pier thing or anything like that, but try to make it as pure and simple as possible.
Is that 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 2? Is that?
Oh, 1, 2, 3.
Or
I'm
three?
sorry. Oh, shoot. Number 2, I'm still on top. Number 2, this is not as important as number 1, but number 2 would be that the words Green Light Pinellas be somewhere incorporated in the title or in the, at least somewhere in the initiative. One thing that happened in Hillsborough County that we learned, now I'm not sure if this actually caused it to fail, but all of their advertising and outreach that they did in a very short period of time, starting just in May, was called Moving Hillsborough Forward. That was their logo. And that never appeared in the ballot language at all. All of their mail-outs and signs said, vote for Moving Hillsborough Forward, and then there was a very long ballot question. The interlocal agreement that you have that Mr. Zimmett drafted and provided to the county attorney is a fairly straightforward document that's not very long, and it covers 3 things, not 2. 3 priorities are captured in that agreement. We need this agreement because, again, the county collects the sales tax, and then they have to, the agreement governs how they would give it to PSTA to implement the Green Light Plan. The 3 most important things that are incorporated into that document are, number 1, that the 100% of the sales tax funds go to the Green Light Pinellas plan. And the reason that's the most important thing is what Ernst & Young just presented. The financial plans and the sustainable plan over the long period of time for this funding source requires 100% of the projected revenues from a 1% sales tax. Number 2, not as important as number 1. Number 1 is to implement the Green Light Pinellas plan. Number 2 is very important, is that the money flows from the county to PSTA. Now, the reason versus some other entity, T-BARDA or something else. At least the plans up to date, and at least our recommendation is that the money would flow to PSTA to implement the program. And number 3, I'm sorry I didn't say number 2. Number 3, this is the local, or this interlocal agreement is the vehicle by which we will eliminate the PSTA property tax when and if the sales tax is approved. We tried to get the state 2 years ago to eliminate PSTA ad valorem from our ability to levy a property tax, but that was vetoed. So this is the workaround plan to do it locally. There's section number 5, the clause number 5 in that agreement speaks to this. That if, in the event that and no one that's here now, but some future PSTA board would decide to levy a property tax, which would still be theoretically in the power of PSTA to do, PSTA promises in this agreement to remit an equal amount of money back to the county so that there would be no financial incentive for the PSTA board, for a future PSTA board to levy the property tax because we wouldn't get any more money. The county essentially is made whole and PSTA doesn't get any additional funds. Now, there may be a question. We originally came up with this clause that the county would just withhold dollar for dollar sales tax from a PSTA board that levied a property tax. But we've reviewed this interlocal agreement with Ernst & Young, with the Ernst & Young advisors, and with other bond counsel. And obviously, there are concerns or there are limitations on our debt instruments down the road that we're looking at for any restrictions or impacts that the county might impose on this sales tax. Obviously, the cleanest way to issue debt under this that would appeal to, say, bondholders would be if it was as straightforward as possible flow of funds, so that, and that they would be the first to be covered by under any debt. And so this section 5 is a little bit of a question whether or not if a county commission or a PSTA board in the future might reduce that sales tax flow, that might have an impact on our ability to issue debt. So the best case scenario that Alan and his other attorneys at his firm have come up with is that PSTA promises to remit an equal amount, not necessarily that the county would withhold the amount. It's still not as good of a fix to the property tax elimination as a state action to eliminate that from PSTA. So the action, and the legislative committee supported this at their last meeting, is to continue to pursue a state action to eliminate the PSTA ability to levy an ad valorem tax